whatever you're choosing to do, someone will tell you you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So that's a given. And I think going into motherhood, that would be my advice to moms, is that someone's always going to criticize you for whatever choice you make. You're definitely damned if you don't with motherhood.
Welcome to Seriously Catherine, a podcast about taking your business seriously, but not yourself. All right, guys. My hot take this week is all about The Young and the Restless, okay? So growing up, my mom watched The Young and the Restless. It was on any day we had off of school. She was a school teacher, so any day she had off of school, we had off of school, it was always on. It was like, don't talk to the woman while she's folding clothes and watching Young and the Restless. It was just like a staple in our house growing up. It was just announced that CBS has renewed The Young and the Restless through the 2027-2028 season. Young and the Restless remains the #1 daytime drama for 36 years running. It's also CBS's longest running series, and this renewal will bring the daytime drama through its 55th season. I mean, I think it's remarkable in this day and age that this show is still being watched, being paid attention to, and most importantly, I think the most fascinating aspect of all this is that Victor Newman is still going. Well, we all know here, like, I like the older guy, the Harrison Ford, the Kevin Costner. Okay, back to Victor Newman. The longest running cast members are Melody Thomas Scott and Eric Braeden, who portray Nikki and Victor Newman, and they joined in February 1979 and February 1980. This makes them the two of the longest tenured actors in American soap operas. I mean, it's incredible. I can't even say I've watched the show because I have not watched the show probably since I had to watch it when I was growing up. It's safe to say that Victor's been divorced and married to Nikki at least a dozen times. I mean, the storylines must be so warped. How do you continue to add more to the story? It's so ridiculous. Anyway, if you've ever met somebody that watches Young and the Restless, you better not disrespect, because they are intense. Most of the people who watch Young and the Restless are older. They don't know technology and streaming devices. So it's like, this is what is on. They're watching what comes on. They're watching The Price is Right, followed by Young and the Restless, followed by The Bold and the Beautiful, and then you got The View. And so this is how they're keeping up on the times. And they're just like, they're quick as whip. Now, I have to fact check this with my sister-in-law, because my grandmother-in-law back in the day, she used to watch Young and the Restless, and I swear to you, I think it kept her mind sharp, because she like knew all the storylines, and she knew who was sleeping with who, and who was, who died in a car accident, like all the things she knew. And I just think, like, I'm a fan of Young and the Restless. I support this renewal of their contract, and I think that they'll probably renew it again, because what world would we live in if there was no Young and the Restless? That's my hot take. Hi guys, I'm so excited about this week's episode of Seriously Catherine. I'm joined by my friend Jenny Whitty, and she is formerly known as Mamatoga, the very first mommy blogger in Saratoga Springs, and she's a mother of 6 kids. She does it all somehow, and I'm just so excited to have her here to share her stories of motherhood and marriage and everything in between. Let's get to it. Okay, so a little bit of background. So obviously we met right when you were launching Mamatoga, which was a very, very, I mean, you don't still have Mamatoga, right? You rebranded it.
I don't have it anymore. I mean, I still have the email and the domain, because so many people remember that email and use that email. And then I find myself sending new emails from it. I'm like, But yes, and people will still say to me, like, are you Mamatoga? I'm like, I am.
Yeah.
But it's been like 7 years, I think, since I switched it to Mini City.
Yeah.
But people do still say it.
So tell us more about like how you started that, why you started it, because I do feel like that was when you were like on the scene.
Yeah, so I started it when I was pregnant with Jack, who's 12 now. I have my 2 older kids that were preschool age at the time. I felt like Saratoga has so many events to offer, and so many preschools. There's so many kids and family events, but I felt like I was missing them all the time. Like, I'd hear about it afterward. Or Victorian Street Walk is a perfect example. because I was like, that sounds great, but can I bring my kids to it? Was the street closed off? And I felt like I could not find all this information. And also like even restaurants and shops, like it was hard to find that information. It seems crazy because nowadays everything is online, but 12 years ago, it was different.
Yeah.
It was like all we had was Facebook.
It's true. It's true.
And so I felt like I was missing everything, and I wanted to do a website that highlighted local events and let people know ahead of time so you could plan, and local preschools, because I started the kids at the Saratoga Regional YMCA, which coincidentally, Shep, who's my youngest, goes to the same preschool that Finn went to when Finn was his age. So I'm like, I've been here for 15 years. But I was like, I only know this preschool. I only know these moms. I don't know any of the other preschools. There's all these other moms and preschools. And so I wanted to start it as a way to share all of the relevant mom stuff just for this area specifically. I want to find Saratoga specific stuff. And so I came up with the name Mamatoga,
It's brilliant.
And went from there.
Did you ever buy Papatoga?
I might have. I probably
I think so.
did.
I think you did. But because I remember the first time I met you, it was at like a because you were onto the magazine at that point, and you were having some sort of like launch party.
Yes.
Where was that? It was at somewhere in like on Maple Ave. Can you remember this exactly?
No, I think the first one I did myself. I think the launch party was at Boca Bistro.
Okay.
Because that actually just popped up in my Time Hop memories. Because Heather
You
Straughter
still
was
use
on the
Time
cover.
Hop.
Of course I use Time Hop. It like honestly, Time Hop is like the best and worst part of my day. Because you're like, look at this photo, it's so great.
know.
But at the same time, it's like you're like, they're so big now.
I know, but so you don't have Facebook memories that comes up? Because that's what
No, I
comes
do,
up for
but
me.
no, I've got all of them.
You got
I've
it all.
I'm like, flood me with memories. I don't care how emotional it makes me. But so Heather Straughter and her husband and their son, they were on the cover of the first issue that I did myself.
Yeah, of Mamatoga magazine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to say that was 11 years ago. Which
Yeah, it was
crazy.
It's crazy. It was around the same time that Paint and Sip opened, because I remember thinking like, I got to get this Mamatoga to come to Paint and Sip and experience it and tell people about it. I still tell this story how like that was the fire catching, because people did go to your website especially if they just moved to the area, if they needed something fun to do. It was very clear. Your perspective was so spot on. Like just your writing style was great. You know, people who read it felt like they knew you. I'll never forget this story. This is years later. We were going to Northshire Bookstore, and we were at some sort of play event. You must have posted about it. You must have shared that this is what you were going to do, and we were going, whatever. And these two adorable ladies who were clearly from Asia, they, had like these little gift bags in their hands, and like you walked by, and they were like following you. And I'm like, Jenny, those women are here for you. And you're like, no, they're not. I'm like,
I remember that.
I'm like, I swear to God, they came to this event to see you. Like, you have to go talk to them. And you did. And turns out they had relocated here for Global Foundries.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I remember now.
And your website was such a beacon of information and light and guidance to them. And it was just like so eye-opening to me that like, oh my God, people are reading what you're putting out there, and they're like, it's like a Bible to them.
Yeah, having that kind of feedback was so great, because my exact intention for it, in order to share community stuff with the community, and then have people say, I found this through your website. I was like, great, so it's working. And it's always nice to meet people when they say, oh, I read your website. And people will say like, is it awkward that I know who you are, but we've never met? And I'm like, absolutely not. That's what I'm trying to do. Like that is absolutely my purpose in doing it. So.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any other sort of like stories or insights into like, the impact you've made?
I mean, off the top of my head, I would say that, so when I did Mamatoga, part of the reason why I split it off into Mini City was because I shared so much personal stuff and local stuff. And I think that probably the biggest impacts I felt were when I would share personal stories. A bunch of times I shared stories about postpartum depression and going through that, and sort of the one piece I had explained how I had reached out to my doctor, and this wasn't a local doctor at the time. This was before I moved here, when I had my oldest daughter. They said, well, we're just going to prescribe you something over the phone, get it filled, you'll be good. And I remember being like, that's it. We're not going to talk. I can't talk to a person. I only talk to a receptionist. And like I said, this wasn't a local doctor, but And I wrote about that. And I had so many women that emailed me and said, I'm so glad you shared that experience because I feel like this is what I'm going through. And I feel like I'm put in a place more where I can be an advocate for myself and speak up and say, no, I need to speak to a person. And if I'm not going to speak to a person, or I'm not going to be seen by a person, I need to go to a different practice because I need to advocate for my own well-being. And there was a lot of connections made where I would write something and someone would email me directly and we would have conversations. I mean, there's so many people that I've had conversations with that I've never met in person based on something I've shared, either if it's Instagram or something that I've shared on the website. It reminds me of when I first became a mom. It can be such a lonely place.
Yeah.
And being able to make those connections with people. And sometimes even if you have a little mom group, sometimes it can be hard to break in with, okay, I have this problem or I'm having this question. And so reaching out to somebody, even if they're a stranger, can make that connection for you and make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, because I also think it's just sort of like timing too, like who you sort of get connected with in that moment, you know, not those people may not even have the solution for you or that shared experience, but you're just like, those are all the people that you know.
Yeah, they just happen to be your group.
Yeah.
So it's like, for better or worse, sometimes it's like, then if you're reading something and you're like, okay, this person is in my neighborhood, they're in our kids go to school in the same school district. It makes it more like I am a mom in your school. It's I'm someone you can talk to even if we don't know each other in person. Yeah. I've had a lot of conversations like that are always very nice.
Yeah, so you went from, again, from what I can remember, you went from like Mamatoga, you did the magazine. I said wait, because I felt so engaged and invested.
Oh, you were there.
You were the magazine, and then you kind of switched things to Mini City, and that's when you started doing just JennyO'Keefe.com.
Yes. So I switched things because I shared a lot of personal stuff and it just evolved that way in a natural way. But then I found that as I got more sponsors and advertisers for the site, I really wanted to separate the hyper-local stuff into its own and keep the personal stuff as its own thing. And at the same time, I have basically phased out like the blogging part of it because again, that was years ago when there was more of a blog presence, I feel like, with that sort of thing, like the mommy blogger thing. I mainly just, Mini City has its own website and the magazine and Instagram, and then I have my own Instagram that I share parenting trials and tribulations or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, I feel like you make it look very easy to have a big family.
I hope I don't make it look too easy because it's not. I try to keep it realistic. I feel like obviously social media is everyone's highlight reel, and I do try to keep things realistic as much as possible. And that being said, everything I share is authentic, though. I do try to share things that are, I mean, I keep saying realistic, but I'm trying to think of a different word for realistic.
Like authentic.
Yeah, authentic.
And what's happening.
One thing I try to share with people, and I've been trying to share more of, is, and it's funny because I say to myself, I really don't have the time, is that people ask me all the time, like you said, like having a big family, how do you balance everything? And my answer is always, I don't balance everything. I'm not expecting myself to balance everything. And people say, how do you do it all? And I say, I don't have a personal life. I really don't right now have much of a personal life. And I have before, we had book club and everything and go out to dinner and all that stuff. Basically because of COVID, a lot of that changed. And then I had another baby and there are things that fall by the wayside. And then there's things that come back into your life at different times. But having 6 kids that are all in school right now at the same time and having a personal life and having a job and all the other things that go along with being a human being. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I don't have everything all at once.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your house is not always clean. I'm not saying you, but I'm saying also me.
It absolutely is not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's also just like logistically challenging when you have older kids and younger kids, and they're in activities. Like, we just went to Posies in the Girl Scouts. I'm a Girl Scout troop leader, really only because I provide the space for the girls to meet in on a monthly basis. That was, like, my contribution.
That's a huge contribution, though.
Yeah. So, it's winter break. We're not going anywhere. We don't have any plans to go out of town. So it's like, okay, what am I going to do with these kids? Well, luckily, Girl Scouts planned, like, they rented the ice rink for 2 hours on Wednesday.
Oh, I love that.
I went there, and one of the other moms, she's got 3 kids, but, like, they're in in everything. They're in hockey. They're in field hockey. They're in softball. They're in Girl Scouts. I'm like, I can't wrap my head around doing that. And even like Posey wants to start swimming. And I'm like, how are we going to fit that in?
I mean, swimming is a lot.
You already do soccer. Like, why don't we do both? And then I was sort of like watching. I was having like a crisis a little bit when I'm like watching her, and Ruby got to come along because she's a sibling. But I'm like sitting there watching her, and she's got like one of those, like it almost looks like a walker, like a blue plastic walker with handles. Yeah. So anyway, I'm like, do I need to invest in lessons for these girls to learn how to properly ice skate? Because like, what if that's their thing?
Yeah.
I was having, like, honestly, I'm like thinking to myself, what am I not doing? Or like, is there something else I should be investing in for these girls to like have another skill set, you know, like they're doing snow skiing. And then I was like thinking to myself, it's never enough, you know, like how do you know what's going to click? And I thought about you actually because Jack, your middle one.
He's one of my middles.
Yeah.
I call him my biggies, my middles, and my littles.
Yeah. So Jack is 12.
Yes.
And he's one of your middles.
Yep.
And he is like basically a pro snowboarder.
Yeah. Well, not professional yet, but
because he's not old enough, but he's like, the skill set is there. I mean, if you've ever seen a video of this kid, it's incredible. He's like flipping.
Yep.
Yeah. So how did you know that like this is going to be his path?
For Jack, basically, my husband snowboards and my two older kids snowboard. And then Jack was like, that looks cool. And so he started going with them. And we just noticed that he was really good at it and loved it. And it just developed from there. I mean, like you said, it's basically giving them the opportunity. If they're like, I like doing this, I want to try it, go ahead. I tell people all the time, it's like sign up for a session and make the commitment for one session. And if they love it, then do another one. If they hate it, move on to something else.
Yeah.
And they can try everything.
But like each of your kids has got a different thing that they're like excelling at, you know? So I feel like Finn's lacrosse.
Yep, Finn plays lacrosse and he drives now, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Because lacrosse at one point was started after school and then went to like 6 o'clock every day. And then they have a game on the weekends. I was like, this is so much driving. But then when they start to have friends that drive, you're like, okay, this is great. Because there's no bus that takes them home after practice at schools. And you're like, why? And then Levy, though, it's the ballet, which is really complicated.
Another very intense.
Yes. And it's like 45 minutes away. And then when she's doing Nutcracker, she's there 6 days a week. And Jack, during the season, snowboards almost every day. And so
you basically just like don't see them.
I mean, I see Levy a lot because I'm the one who drives to ballet.
Yeah.
And Jack gets home early enough from snowboarding because they go really early and it ends early. So I do see them. But yeah, it is a lot of stuff. But like with Levy, with anything when they get a little bit older, like Levy used to ride horses also. But I'm like, you got to pick one. Yeah. Because you can't do both, especially with ballet. You get to a point where if you're going to be on point, you have to take a certain number of classes because of your feet and blah, blah, blah. And so she'd have to make the commitment to that one thing. And I'm like, so commit and try it for this session. And if you want to continue doing that, then you can. So it kind of cancels out extra stuff.
Yeah.
But there was a time where she was doing like 3 things at once. I was like, let's focus in on something.
Yeah.
And it happened to be ballet.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we're just not there yet. So Posey, she's in that stage of like trying things. She's doing the snow. I always have to say like ice skating
like
or
snow
ice
skiing.
I have to say snow skiing because in my head when I think skiing,
water skiing.
It's like it's ingrained to think water skiing, and we don't ever have to say water skiing. We just say skiing. But here
you only say skiing down there?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Because up here, when you said snow skiing, I was like, okay.
Yeah, she's not from around here. But I mean, I am now. I've been here for 12 years. So when do you become a local?
I guess when you stop saying snow skiing.
Growing up, she's not going to like that I'm saying this, but my mom let me quit everything. Like, she just let me quit stuff whenever I would just be like, I'm not doing it anymore. I didn't stick with dance. I didn't stick with cabbage ball is what we had. It's like, looks like a cabbage and it's a ball. It's like a soft ball and you don't have a glove or anything. You just play with your hands. Anyway, quit that. Did gymnastics, tumbling, quit that. Like I don't know. I'm sure I was a difficult child, maybe she just didn't want to put up with it, because I can definitely see that. Like, I would just like dig my heels in. And so that has made me the type of parent that says like, no, we're not quitting. We're going to go to every little thing. We signed up for this. You wanted to do this. It costs money.
Yeah.
It takes time, energy to get you to where you need to go, and we're not quitting it. But actually, Posey did one season of softball, didn't like it, quit. She just told me this morning she doesn't want to do skiing, snow skiing. So I'm like, you know, what is this? Like, she hasn't found her thing. Or there's so many things that can fuck it up, right? Like, it's a bad coach, or she didn't get along with a teammate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And did you have an experience with that with Jack? Is that like why Sean just started training him himself, right?
So technically, no, because I'll nutshell it for you. Like, where Jack rides in Vermont, you either have to be part of a team or a school that rides at that mountain. There are no private coaches. Mm-hmm. They're just not allowed, because they want you to either do coaching through their ski school or belong to one of the schools or academies that rides at the mountain. And so since Jack and Sean are father and son, it works out. I say that Sean is his coach, but we obviously don't pay him or anything. So it works out really well. But basically, the way that Jack learns and the way that Jack responds to coaching is one-on-one. It works for him better than being in a group. And so that works for now, could change in the future. Yeah, like Jack did flag football. And he's a little bit quiet, but he's very outgoing when you get to know him. But he didn't really connect with kids on the team. But I said, we're going to finish this out. You made a commitment. You're on a team. And so the team needs you, because they don't have enough kids to play if you don't play anymore. And I do the same thing. I'm like, I paid the money for this.
Yeah.
So let's just finish it out. If you don't like it, then that's what you can look forward to, saying, I don't like it. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, you know what you don't like.
Yeah. I mean, it's only happened a few times with us. Oh, like Tally played lacrosse. And because everyone was like, play lacrosse in the spring, because lacrosse is like spring field hockey. And she did it, and she was like, I do not like that. And I'm like, that's fine. You don't have to do it again. It's totally fine. We're not going to do it again. I don't feel like paying for something you don't want to do.
Right.
And I don't want to go every weekend to watch you do something you don't want to do.
Yeah.
But we did finish it out. Again, it was a team sport, so it was easy to say, you made a commitment. They need a certain number of players. Mm-hmm. Just be there for the team that you said you would be part of. And then after that, we'll peace out.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that in the Northeast, there's just like different activities. Like, we didn't have lacrosse growing up. We didn't have field hockey growing up. I mean, if we did, we didn't play that. There was like baseball, football, dance.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun. I think as the years go on, the kids get older, we're going to have to figure it out. And it's also fun to sort of like see your kid out there excelling at something. Like, it's going to be incredible to watch Jack do these flips and shit. He's going to be a pro person, right? Is that what they call him?
That's his goal. It's definitely his goal. He won nationals 2 years in a row. And then this year he decided to go on tour with the snowboarding company that sponsors him instead. It's very exciting. It's definitely not something I would have expected to do. I never expected to homeschool anybody. That was not my jam. I was not looking into homeschooling at all. So it's like I find myself being a homeschooling parent with a kid that does something that is kind of different, and we just sort of go with the flow with it.
Well, I remember you were like the first sort of like homeschool parent that I knew that wasn't in that stereotypical, you know, when you think of a homeschooling kid, you're like, oh,
I know,
God,
everyone has
weird
the stereotypes of homeschoolers. And I have to admit, I definitely probably felt the same way about homeschooling. And that's why I was like, this isn't for me. And I love putting them on the bus, and they've got friends and, you know, stimulation, and everything was great. And the rest of my kids go to school. And this is something I talk about a lot on Instagram. Jack, when he was in first grade, he had some difficulty, and it wasn't the best year. It wasn't the best experience.
It was COVID.
No, this was right before COVID.
Okay.
And I remember going in and meeting with the teacher, and in my mind, and I think I said it out loud too, I was like, I don't need this. He doesn't need this. I'm going to pull him out of school, and he's going to snowboard, and I'll just homeschool him. And even as I said it, I remember being like, I can't homeschool him. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then when COVID did start, I'm just going to homeschool you, Jack. I'm not doing this log on to 25 apps. I'm like, let's just make the break now, and then you're not going to go back. And he was totally fine with that. And it worked out great for him. The other kids would not want to be homeschooled, and I wouldn't want to homeschool them. So it works out well. And that being said, I'm not a traditional homeschooler anyway. I started in second grade. You know, I never taught anybody how to read, like all the hard stuff. Like he came to me knowing a lot of stuff already.
Yeah.
So we had a really good foundation. Like I could not imagine teaching a kid how to read. I probably could if I tried and Googled it a lot and had a lot of support.
Yeah.
But he already knew how to do the basics.
Yeah. Yeah, but and also like homeschooling is all the rage now. Like I think after COVID, there's a lot of people who were just like, you know what, we're not going to deal with this shit. And we're taking our kids out. We're going to homeschool them. It has been sort of become very political. But I think just from just the convenience aspect of it, like during COVID, it was a bitch. And luckily, I just had Posey during the COVID time.
Right?
And she was in kindergarten.
Kindergarten homeschooling. I was like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm like, well,
Can we not?
So yeah, we lucked out. I was basically like, she's pretty much not showing up for the rest of kindergarten because like, this isn't working.
You know what? We'll try tomorrow.
Yeah, and she was fine. I mean, first grade was like that hybrid weird.
Yes.
They were in school. I can't even actually remember. I think I'm so traumatized.
No, they
by
were
it.
in school.
They were in school, but they had to wear a mask.
Yes,
so
the
I think
older
a lot
kids were hybrid.
Yeah, right,
half and half.
Right. So we lucked out, and there were a lot of parents who were like, you know what, we're not masking, we're not doing this, we're not playing by the rules, we're not testing for every time somebody gets sick. So we're pulling our kids out, and we're going to homeschool them. And now it's like such a huge thing. You know, my mom she retired from teaching, but she went back to teach at a homeschool school.
Oh, okay.
Which is like. It is exactly what it sounds like. They are doing the homeschool curriculum, but it's at a building. You know what I'm saying? It's like a woman opened up her own homeschool school.
There's so many different hybrids of it now. Like my sister-in-law homeschools, but they're part of a homeschool collective. And there's a bunch of families. And then they take turns going to different activities that are outside the home. And they're set up for this homeschool collective. So there's so many different ways to do it. I like to tell people also, like I said, we're not traditional homeschoolers. I use the term out school very loosely because there's obviously when Jack is training and he's snowboarding every day, they're like, well, how do you fit in 2 hours, 3 hours of school? I'm like, we don't. It doesn't happen every day. It all gets worked out, but it doesn't happen every single day. And he's not sitting down at a desk in our house. All of the things I thought about homeschooling were definitely completely false. I mean, there's definitely a lot of the stuff that is true. Like Jack and I do little projects together. There is a lot of the making sure he's doing X, Y, and Z. But it's not, okay, come sit down at the table and we're going to do this hours of work every single day. It's a much looser structure during the season. That's what people always ask me. They're like, I want to get my kid into snowboarding or skiing. What is the first step? And I always tell them, can they handle the cold? Yeah. And if they can, then that's number one. That is your biggest obstacle. If you can handle the cold, then you could enjoy skiing or snowboarding. Like I personally have not skied since Jack was younger because I've been pregnant or had a baby that I've been holding. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to be in the lodge. Yeah. I'm good.
You are just bringing, like, I'm flooding memories because I was so scared to have like this little baby and not know how to act or what to do with my kid. I would just tag along with you everywhere. You brought us tubing or sledding at SPAC. Do you remember that we broke?
Oh, yes.
I don't know if we broke in, but there was like a back gate open and you were like, this is where we got to go.
Yes.
And we went through a back gate and we slid. It was awesome. We never saw anybody else there.
No one ever said no. I did not ask, but yes, it was. We slid right to the amphitheater.
Yeah, it was awesome. Another good spot that maybe people won't like that I'm saying this out loud, but is behind Adirondack Trust on Church Street. Like it also is sort of like the golf and polo club.
I was going to say, is that their property?
I don't know whose property.
Well, that's like McGregor, but they let everybody go there.
Yeah, well, McGregor's too far away from me.
Too far.
So it's like 20 minutes away.
20 minutes. No, I'm the same way because that's where I live. And I'm like, downtown. I'm like, are you serious? It's like easily 10 to 15 minutes away.
We sound ridiculous. In other cities and regions,
that's
they
like
drive.
If people are like, go to Albany. I'm like, Albany? That's like a day trip. What do you mean, Albany?
I do it the other way.
What is the weather like there? I don't even know.
I pointed out the other way. I feel like Albany people don't want to come to Saratoga. I'm willing to go to Albany. I think it is a day trip.
I never do.
I'm like, if I'm going to go to Albany, I might as well drive to the city.
See, no, exactly. You're like, I feel like I'm halfway there. No, you know what gets me to Albany is Trader Joe's.
Well, there's one in Clifton Park now, though.
I know. But if I'm like, well, if I'm going down there, I'm going to go to Trader Joe's.
Right. And I have not really embraced the Trader Joe's.
What?
I know. I just...
You've never seen a BuzzFeed article that's like, you need these 35 things from Trader Joe's?
I think
they're all right. It's all correct.
It's like I haven't experienced it.
Once
like
you
I don't
go,
know
they
when
will brainwash you as you walk in, and then you're good to go. You don't need to even worry about it. Just go one day, and then you'll be like, oh my God, how have I not come here before?
Okay, so this is like why I haven't. I mean, Mark makes fun of me too because like I will go to Price Chopper just because I know where everything is. It's very familiar to me. It looks like...
I mean, everyone has that feeling that you know where the aisles are.
Yeah, and you know...
When they redesign the store, you're like, where am I?
Right.
Disorienting.
But I just think, I remember that even like moving here, I was like, oh, this grocery store looks like a grocery store.
So you found Price Chopper in the beginning and you're like, ride or die Price Chopper. It's Market 32, by the way. It's not even Price Chopper anymore.
I still call it the Ghetto Chopper.
Oh my God. There's the one that was...
Yeah, so there used to be a Price Chopper downtown, and this is before they turned it into like a nicer version of it, but it used to be like this shady parking lot and a shady building. And
I never went to that one because I was like, I'm not going to park downtown to go grocery shop. I live in Wilton with Target and stuff, so I was like, I don't need that.
Yeah, you are definitely a Target person, huh? You're not a Walmart person.
I'm an everything person. No, I go
everywhere.
You
go to Target a lot, though.
I actually, so believe it or not, I never go to Target
healthy living.
Anymore.
You're a healthy living person.
I am, yes.
Or you
because I know I still go on healthy living because I need my, vegan ice cream bars. I do Target pickup a lot because it prevents me from buying stuff I don't need for the most part. And then the other day when I did Target pickup, he was like, O'Keefe, he's like, your name comes up a lot. And I was like, I know. And he's like, I'm usually the one to bring it out for you. I'm like, well, I appreciate that because I don't want to go in there. Because if I do, I'm going to see all this stuff and put a bunch of stuff in my cart. And when I do go in, I go to the dollar spot and I buy a bunch of stuff I do not need.
Yeah.
I haven't gone grocery shopping with the kids in like a long time. I will not do it.
Okay, so what are other things that you do to stay sort of sane? Because in that moment, I'm just like, I did this to myself. I did this to myself. I chose to have these children. I chose to bring them into this grocery store.
I made a series of choices, starting with having them.
The judgment you get from people, like I'm certainly like way less concerned what other people think. I mean, I've traveled by myself with the kids, like on planes, like so. Sometimes when I see something come up on social media, like somebody yelled at this woman on a plane or whatever, and I'm just like, they haven't lived my life.
Because... Oh yeah, I mean, and I feel that on a deep level because when I was a younger mom, it would happen a lot, especially like I feel like when you hit like 3 or 4 kids, then people want to be like, oh, those are yours. And you're like, yeah. I relish when I'm with all of the kids together in public because I do see people being like, especially because I have a 17-year-old and a 4-year-old and they're like, what's happening here? And I'm like, these are all mine.
I love it. I mean, I know it's, again, you make it so attainable. Yeah. Okay. This can be transferred to any sort of like goal that you have, right? Like find the people who are doing those things actively.
Yeah. And you're like, how'd you do that?
And I'm like, give me tips and make me feel less alone because, I mean, even when I'm like telling people, like if I'm like meeting somebody for the first time, they're like, oh, what do you do? What are you about? I'm like, well, I have these 3 businesses and I have a husband that travels for work and I have 3 kids and I want more. And I want more businesses, I want more kids, I want more everything. I want abundance and all the things. I want to be like fulfilled all the time. And their eyes just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're like, you know what? I'm not crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to be the one that is contributing to the decreasing birth rate, or I'm not going to be the one contributing to like our GDP going down because I'm hustling and I'm working and I'm doing all the stuff. So I think it's important, like for myself, to just find the people who don't think those ideas are crazy. They want to support you. They also want to see you succeed, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Just like at least just be happy doing the things that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree. I never planned on having 6 kids, but it works out perfectly. I think that everybody feels that way, or I would hope that people feel that way. Not that everybody feels that way, but if people say, well, I know so many people who want, I want 2 kids and that's it. And if I only wanted 2 kids and was okay with that, that's great.
Yeah.
Or for whatever reason, I don't even have a reason. I was like, let's keep going. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah, well, if you can and all's well, right? Like, just why not?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, like I said, circling back, like there's a lot of sacrifices that are involved with having a lot of children. I didn't grow up with a big family dynamic at all, and I don't know what possess me, quite frankly, to want to have a large family. But now looking at it, I obviously wouldn't want it any different.
You have 6 kids between 17, oldest is 17, youngest is 4.
Yes.
And like, how are you navigating that? Because I am very vocal about a lot of the challenges
I gotta tell
and
you,
a lot of the pushback and just like a lot of like, there's a lot
like
of the
that kind of stuff.
And they're like, oh, well, you have heard this before. Like, oh, don't blink or time goes by fast.
Oh, I definitely hear that. And I am so guilty of saying it because I have a 17-year-old. And I'm like, you were just 4. I have to say, I don't like when people want to spook parents about any stage. I don't know why people want to do that. I think that sometimes when people are like, I got through the newborn stage, so now I can tell people, oh, that was terrible. That was terrible. Like, it's like when you tell someone who's going to have their baby, like, well, you're never going to sleep again. It's like, you absolutely will sleep again. It's going to feel really long, but it's not actually that long in the grand scheme of things. And you will get through it, just like potty training. That feels like forever. But when you think about how long that tiny period of time of their lives, but it can be a difficult task. But I dislike when parents want to sort of freak out new parents or say like the teenager thing, like, well, just wait till they're teenagers. Like they're going to be terrible, horrible people, instead of highlighting some of the things that can be great about teenagers. I mean, that just made it sound like teenagers are horrible, which they're not.
It's tough. The whole parenting thing is tough. It's hard when you have parents who are like, oh, you know, and I'm just like, well, maybe I'm going to be really good at it. Not that they weren't. See, this is tough. Because,
I know,
like, I'm not going to say.
Maybe I'll be really good at it.
Maybe I'll be really good at it. And so it's like hard to not to compare, because I do get that a lot from my mom will tell me, oh, I did such a horrible job with you. You know, you turned out so, look at you now. You're such a piece of shit. You know, like sarcasm, right? Yes. Like, but I think as a parent, it's got to be hard seeing your kids parent, you know, and thinking like, holy shit, they were just 4, you know, and like, okay, now they have these little people, and it's just like got to be a mind blow.
Well, and I think it's true that I look back on different stages and think, oh, that was hard. I don't know if I'd want to do that again. I do tell people it goes by fast. That's absolutely true. Everybody listening that is rolling their eyes at me, you will listen to this podcast again in 2 years and you'll be like, oh my God, they're so big now. That went by so fast. It is true. Like I said, having a 17-year-old that's a senior, I'm like, no, I'm in complete denial that is even happening. And it went by super fast. People always ask too, what's the hardest stage of parenting? Because I have one of everything now. I have a middle schooler, I have high schoolers, I've got girls, I've got boys. I got it all. I have everything. And I've done all of it. I've done toddler to teenager. Every single stage has its own difficulties. Every stage is hard, and every stage comes with its own great things and not so great things, just like basically everything in life.
Yeah.
And so to sort of want to scare someone off to be like, wait till they're teenagers, they're going to be terrors. It's like, no, they're going to develop into their own people, and you're going to get to know them on a different level. And it's going to be open up these new doors of parenting and open up new doors in them and in you that you didn't know you had before. And it's a great experience. And it also is terrifying because they're driving cars on the road and you're like, what? Like, you are a baby. How do you have a driver's license?
Yeah. So I think the sneaky sort of challenge that creeps in and I didn't see it coming was managing your marriage.
Yeah.
While you have all these kids. And I think it's really, really easy to focus on the kids, like the both of you. Focus on the kids and like, let's just get this kid, you know, to a point where he or she exists in life and is capable and like we can be real proud of that. And then you forget that like you got to put time and effort, energy into this person that you made these children with.
Yes.
And I think, I don't know, for me, that has been just a total curveball. I never saw examples of people in my life like really working on their marriage and that relationship. And my parents definitely argued out loud. Like we were aware of any like we were aware of it all. Like they had no filter, you know. But I think like that's that piece of it. It goes into raising a family as well, you know, and being on the same page with that person, making sure like, okay, you're on board with this because this is happening, you know.
Yes, I would agree to that too. I would say it's definitely a challenge, and I think that comes in line with the idea that I know, at least when I had kids too, I felt like part of the reason why I felt like I was not doing a good job was that I expected to know what I was doing. And I don't know why I expected that. Nothing really prepares you for having a child until you actually have it. And you're not really presented with the idea of being like, oh, so I'm going to just learn how to do this while I'm doing this really super hard, very important job, which is raising a baby. And then you think every time like, well, they're older now, I should be better at being a parent. But you're not realizing this child that was a baby is now a toddler and they have different needs. And so you're learning all the time when you're doing it. You never finish learning. It's the same thing with relationships. You know, your relationship was different before you have children, and it evolves and it changes, and it requires that time and check-ins and learning and changing also. For some reason, I feel like we have this expectation that, you know, I'm a mom now, I should know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
No, there's no reason. I mean, there are plenty of parenting books, but there really is no reason that most people are prepared.
Yeah.
For being a parent. And I think people need to give themselves a break to be like, yeah, you can learn all this as you go.
Was it during COVID that you stopped drinking? Or like just one day you woke up and you're like, I'm not going to drink anymore? And like, when did Sean follow suit, or this is after Sean stopped drinking?
No, so it's been 7 years.
Oh my
so
God.
what is that?
That was long before
Math.
COVID.
Yes. So it was before COVID. I can't remember the exact year. No, it was random because I was at my mom's for New Year's Eve. I stopped drinking on the most cliche day to stop drinking, but it was New Year's Eve, and I remember I had like a glass of champagne, and I think I had 2 like IPAs or something. And I woke up the next morning, and I was hungover, and I was like, this is not worth being hungover. And the idea of like being around small children when you're hungover is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to do that. And so I was like, you know what? I felt like with each child, I had less and less tolerance for drinking, because when I was in college, it was like I could drink and have no hangover or anything. But each time I had a child, it became worse and worse for being hungover and having like a couple glasses of wine being hungover. And so I didn't say I'm going to quit drinking. I was like, I'm going to take a break. And my husband and I are very competitive. And he was like, I am too. And so I was like, well, that's great, because, to be honest, it does make it easier. So we took a break from drinking on New Year's Day, whatever it was 7 years ago. And we both just decided that it was easier and better to not drink anymore. And I never expected to fully stop drinking, but it has been great. And I don't miss drinking. I think when I quit drinking and the time before that, like when my kids were younger, there was very much this culture of drinking around motherhood, being like, I mean, if you go into the liquor store right now, there are wines that say like mommy's time out, and like break for mommy and mom juice. And it's a delicate subject, because I'm not judgmental about people drinking at all. I choose not to, but it's not like I think everybody should choose not to. I do dislike the idea of pushing it to moms like, you need a break, and that break should be alcohol. I think that's a very mixed message to send to people. And I think that obviously there's many other ways that people can deal with the stresses of motherhood. And there's definitely a lot of stresses, rather than maybe one of the stresses turning into a bigger stressor. And also sort of being like, in order to relax, you need this.
Yeah.
I think is not a great message.
Well, it's like wine is turning into gummies, right? So it's like, it's not really taboo to be high when you're like trying to, come off of a stressful day or just take the edge off. And I think like it's fine. You got to do what you got to do. In some capacities, it makes you a better mom if you are doing something to kind of like make yourself feel okay. But yeah, and I also don't think for you, it wasn't like you had a defined drinking problem. But it wasn't like
exactly, and it
wasn't like you were going out dancing on tables and acting like a crazy person.
That's why it is hard to explain sometimes.
That would be me.
When well, people always, whenever you tell someone you don't drink, and especially when you have 6 kids, they think you're Mormon.
Oh. I didn't think that.
All the time. Yeah, and because my husband, they were just in Utah, and
that's where
like, you don't drink, you're Mormon. And he was like, well, no, and so people automatically assume that if you have quit drinking, that means you had a problem with alcohol. And that, of course, that's true in many cases. But it is also true to be like, this doesn't work for me anymore. so I'm not going to do it anymore. But like when I meet new people and they find out I don't drink, they're like, were you an alcoholic? And I'm like, I wasn't, but it just didn't work for me. So it's like, you can stop doing something with it. It doesn't have to be like you're an alcoholic and you want to stop drinking. You can just be like, I just don't like it anymore.
Yeah. It's also just like one of those things like I feel like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's just
that's like true for all motherhood things in general. I think we can cover everything that it's like whatever you're choosing to do, someone will tell you you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So that's a given. And I think going into motherhood, that would be my advice to moms, is that someone's always going to criticize you for whatever choice you make. If you choose to breastfeed, they'll be like, well, you should be giving yourself a break. Give them a bottle. Why don't you do both? And if you're doing formula, they're going to say, why aren't you breastfeeding? Yeah. And if you homeschool them, they're going to say, why are you doing that? That's crazy. And if you send them to school, someone's going to tell. So someone is always going to be like, you're definitely damned if you don't with motherhood.
Yeah, and I think knowing that going in is really important. So figure out what you need to do for yourself to build your confidence, to build that support system around yourself, and to carry on, because there's really no other choice once you get into it.
Yep, you got to just keep going. Keep moving forward.
Yeah, so to wrap this up, thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy we got to catch up. We need to do it more often. I think you need your own podcast.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what I would talk about. That's what I said
to you. What do you mean?
You
would talk about so much. You have so much to pull from, so much wisdom to bestow. And you'll have to come back soon. Me. Okay, awesome. All right, this week from Saratoga Living After Hours, they are covering 9 local wedding vendors to consider for your big day in Saratoga Springs. Now, I have been married for 12 years now. I have been joking, but not really joking because I'm dead serious about getting remarried. Because I'm kind of been going to a lot of second weddings and hearing about second weddings and showers, and I feel I'm obligated and I'm deserving of another wedding. I'm very highly interested in all the wedding stuff, so let's dig in. I feel like Saratoga Living has covered weddings in the Adirondacks. It's beautiful, with the lake in the background and such. Okay, Love at the Lodge. Okay, the Lodge at Shroon Lake. This is owned by the incredible and amazing Andrea Crucifali, who is going to be a guest on my podcast very soon. There's a 2-level ballroom. What's cool about the Lodge is that your guests can stay at the Lodge. You can get married at the Lodge, and you could have just the whole thing just be there, which is super exciting. It's like a weekend slumber party with all your best friends. Number 3, I Do's with a View. This is at the Fort William Henry Hotel's newly renovated carriage house. So I was just at the Fort William Henry Hotel for the Winter Dreamscape thing. That was so much fun. The kids loved it. And it's so adorable. You pull around and there's this adorable carriage house, and that's where all the weddings are. It's so cute. I love this place. And we actually stayed the night there when we went. And what's so cool about these hotel rooms is there's a tub in the hotel room. It's not in the bathroom. It's next to the bed. I love it. All right. This is high on the list. I mean, this is no surprise. Picture perfect at the Adelphi. I mean, who hasn't seen these quintessential beautiful images of brides and grooms in front of the Adelphi? It's beautiful. And the ballroom is gorgeous. The rooms are really nice. I mean, you've heard me talk about the Polaris Suite. That's where I'd want to stay. I wouldn't want to stay in any other suite but the Polaris Suite because there's a hot tub. What's up with me and the hot tubs? I like a good hot tub. The Adelphi is top on my list. It's hard to narrow down. There's so many options. For dress shopping, Lily of Saratoga, which is right downtown in Franklin Square. It's adorable. I actually always drive by there with the girls and we comment on the dresses. There are some really beautiful windows in Saratoga Springs, but they're not all on Broadway. Lily's not on Broadway. And she also just opened, the owner, Laura Mullen, just opened Styled, which is an offshoot of Lily. And that is where you can go and get your bridesmaids dresses or your mother of the bride dresses or your mother of the groom dresses. And it's just so cute. Oh, okay. So this is beyond the ballroom. So if you want something a little more edgy, eclectic, you can go to the 408, which is the second floor of Cantina on Broadway. And I've been dying to have a party up there because it's so much fun. I've been to a party there. The food is so great. I mean, who doesn't like Mexican? So this is for a chic alternative to a traditional wedding venue. I'm sure that you can incorporate the rooftop. So we got to talk about when this wedding will be because the rooftops only open, when it's nice out. There's a bar up there and you can overlook and look down at the peasants on Broadway walking around. Sipping on a margarita. Maybe the 408 is where I will have my rehearsal dinner. we are going to have to get our makeup done, right? So where better to go than the name says it all at Make Me Fab and the owner, Elaine Curtis. This is right between DeAndrea's and the Pavilion Hotel, which is now Apartments. This is who did my makeup for the Her Life cover too. So they do a fabulous job. She's awesome. I mean, you can't screw your makeup up on that day. Don't try to do it yourself. Have a professional do it. All right, next up, the Mazzone way. Mazzone Hospitality has grown from a hometown catering company to a bona fide capital region wedding empire with an in-house designer, dozens of venues, and yes, a top-notch catering arm that's still going strong after more than 40 years. The food is always great. Like if you go to an event in Saratoga in the capital region, chances are very, 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 very high that Mazzone Hospitality is making that food. All right, to wrap this up, your very first stop, and I guess my very first stop, will be Discover Saratoga. Surprisingly enough, they are not just about tourism and bringing events to Saratoga, but they are also wedding planners. Maybe you didn't know this, but they have a complimentary concierge service, which includes venue recommendations, private tours, assistance with reserving hotel blocks, assistance with transportation options, and a 10% off discount for wedding guests to use at more than 100 local businesses. So that's our first stop. Stop and check in with the team at Discover Saratoga to get your whole wedding thing planned. So stay tuned because I am getting married again to the same person. I think he knows. All right, this week's Facepalm Mom moment is a blast from the past, okay? So I recently remembered this thing that happened to me, and I don't know about you, but sometimes I think back to when I was like a new mom, and I'm like, I cannot believe I did that. I was flying by myself with Posey. She was 6 months old at the time, and this is a time when, like, you know, they're a little more active, and you can't just, like, nurse them to sleep through the plane ride or whatever. So thinking back of it now, it's like it wasn't that big of a deal. I was just traveling with one child. Now I travel with 3 children. Anyway, I remember like sort of when you're waiting at the gate about to get on the plane and you're like, okay, here we go. I'm going to nurse her. I'm going to make sure she's like super sleepy and tired. And, you know, so that when we go to get on the plane, she'll just like sleep. That was like my strategy. And I did notice these 2 older women who were like very New Orleans-y, like very yatty. They were like yapping up a storm. So I get on the plane, I sit down, I'm sitting by the window. Cause again, I'm thinking in my head, like, this is going to be great. I'm going to be like just tucked into this window seat and I'm not going to get up to use the bathroom. I'm not going to get up to walking up and down the aisle. She's just going to be knocked out. I was like super confident. And then we sat down and by the time the plane gets going and she's like waking up, okay, Posey's like, not having it. She's ready to go. So it turns out I'm sitting next to like this very large older man, but completely unaware that I am now traveling with a kid that is not happy. It starts to become like a very miserable plane ride for myself and everyone around me. I was out of pumped breast milk. I'm starting to like really panic. The kid is like not having it. And I'm starting to like really freak out. And I also feel very trapped. Like, do you know that feeling when you're just like, oh my God, I can't get up and move because this guy behind next to me is completely zonked out. Like he must have taken some sort of narcotic or something. He was like completely passed out, like snoring and no awareness that I am freaking out and sweating. I can like feel panic just thinking about how stressed out I was in this like moment of isolation and claustrophobia. So this woman, she was like 3 aisles ahead of me. She gets up and she turns around. She goes, do you want me to take her? And I'm like, yeah, take her. So I literally handed a screaming child, 6-month-old child, across 3 aisles to a stranger who I did not know, other than like I knew for sure, like I observed these women and I knew that they were like from New Orleans. I could hear their accent. I was like, okay, if something inside me was like, yes, please take this baby. Within like, I would say 10 minutes, she was passed out. I like was able to like relax, take a deep breath. And then it set in. I just gave a stranger my child and she was ahead of me on the plane. So she's going to get off the plane before me and then just take off with my freaking baby. I started to panic again. I'm just like trying to like take a deep breath. And I even like sat up at one point, and, like I'm trying to like look ahead and see like if she's okay. And these women are not turning around. They're just like looking down at the baby. Okay, long story short, they stayed seated while I got up to like get off the plane. And this little kid, cherub baby, just looking so peaceful and so adorable and angelic. And meanwhile, she was like a crazy psychopath when I was holding her. It was a roller coaster of emotions. It was one of those moments where I'm just like, did I just give a stranger my baby? Yes, I did. Whoever that woman is, thank God. And I even like, when I was getting off the plane and I'm like walking off and I went to go grab the baby, there was somebody else who was like, wait, you don't know who these women are? And I was like, no. I was desperate, so I gave the stranger my baby. She like just rocked her to sleep, I guess. And she's like, she was an angel. There was no problem, honey. Darling, anytime. You know, I remember when my little girls were so little. I mean, it was just so cool, right? But like, I don't know any other human or mother that would, you know, just hand off a baby like that. That's my facepalm mom moment for this week. Thank you for listening to this podcast. And if you want to connect with me, slide into my DMs on Instagram. My handle is Catherine Hover.